If someone followed you around for a day, would they see somebody surviving? Or would they see somebody living with purpose? Because purpose isn't just about what you say, it's showing up how you decide, and what you choose, and in who you're becoming. Recovery changes habits. Faith changes identity. And identity changes everything. I am Brock, and this is Living with Purpose.
Welcome back to Living with Purpose. This is episode 6. Throughout my life, there have been a lot of moments that I can't explain. Moments where I saw things, I felt things, and I experienced things. And I can't deny those experiences. Every time that I think about those moments, I'm always reminded of a story. In the Bible, there's a story about a young man who was blind since birth. Now think about that for a sec. This wasn't somebody who lost his eyesight. This was someone who never saw anything. No faces, colors, or even lights. Just darkness, or maybe even blurriness. And then one day Jesus comes to him, spits on the ground, gets some mud, puts it in his eyes, tells the man to go wash out his eyes. The man goes and he does exactly what he's supposed to. He comes back into town, and now he can see. For the first time in his life, he can see those colors, those faces, all of those images. This is the part of the story that I love. When he gets back into town, people start questioning. They doubted him, and they even challenged him. He finally said, I don't know how to explain it, but I was blind, and now I can see. And then they bring him to the judges and the rulers at that time. He relates the story to him. Obviously, they told him, no, you're violating, thou shalt not lie is one of the 10 commandments. You're violating that. And maybe they even went so far to be like, well, show us this Jesus guy. The guy's like, dude, I don't know what you want. I was blind this morning, and now I can see. I don't know who Jesus is. I have no idea what he looks like. I just know what he sounds like. They even went so far to bring this guy's parents in and start calling them blasphemers. Because they said the same thing. I have no idea why he has his eyesight now. He didn't this morning. But I love the fact that Jesus comes to him later and asks, what's going on? Why are all these people hating on you, bro? He probably doesn't talk like that, but that's how 2026 Jesus probably says something like, bro. And again, he relates, I was blind this morning. Jesus guy came, spit on the dirt, put the dirt in my eyes. I was blind, now I can see. And then Jesus reveals himself like, that was me. I'm the Jesus. I've had to ask myself, though, have I had moments in my life like that? Moments where I didn't understand what happened, but I just knew that it changed. That answer, it's absolutely yes. There's so many seasons in my life where I was blind and I didn't even know it. With my addiction, I always had to ask myself, do I have control over this? Or am I just telling myself that? And if I'm being honest, I told myself for years that I had this under control. Looking back, though, I definitely didn't. I didn't see how deep it actually ran. I didn't see how deep it actually was. I didn't see how it was going to shape my thoughts, my habits, and even my identity. But there came a point that I finally saw it clearly. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Through work and being able to provide as a father, I often had to ask myself, was I providing or was I just surviving? And by doing this for the family, I didn't see what it was costing them, though. The long hours, the absence, and even the disconnection. I definitely felt like I was doing the right thing, but I was blind on the full picture. Now, with mindset, I had to ask myself, am I being realistic or am I just being negative? I used to think that negative thinking was just being honest. But in reality, it's what kept me stuck. It was limiting what I believed was possible. When that shifted, everything started to shift. The reality is that you see what you're looking for. When you start living different, you begin to see things differently. You start noticing opportunities, blessings, and even directions. And one of the most fascinating things about life is how the human brain works. People will look at the exact same situation and come to a completely different conclusion. And you see it with everything. The division that we face in this country right now between Republicans and Democrats, that is a very, very drawn out line. And people have a different reality. I've heard it said from a lot of people, but Jordan Peterson talked about this. When you start viewing things, your brain will start to filter out everything through that lens. It starts looking for evidence to support what you already believe. So if you believe that life is against you, you will find proof of that. If you believe that things can change, you will start to find proof of that too. This week I was listening to a podcast of a guy who grew up in the Bronx. He described this place as a place with just a bunch of towering buildings with small apartments, layers and layers up. Chaos, drugs, violence, and survivals. And he said that's what he grew up in. His family had migrated here from the Dominican Republic. Like many people coming to America for a fresh start, a change, they got the government assistance that they needed. But like many people that begin that process with government assistance, they started relying on that. And that's the sad thing about that trap, is it just keeps you trapped because you'll get just barely enough to survive every single month. And then you start to get warped into this reality that this is as good as it's going to get for you. And this reality for this young man would eventually lead him to prison. But that's where, like many people, he found God. But his life, it didn't change just because he said he wanted it to change. He had to leave that old life behind. And today his life looks completely different. He talked about how now he has a 7-figure real estate portfolio. And I don't even know what that is, yearly, monthly, weekly, or even daily. I think it's fair to say that he's doing okay now. But I've also said the opposite. I've seen people who have had every advantage. They come from good homes, support, and even opportunities. And they'll still stay stuck. Not because they have to, but because they believe that they can't change. This is where you got to take responsibility. And I found myself asking myself, what am I doing with what I've been given? Because this isn't about ignoring reality. It's about deciding what you're going to do with it. None of us have a choice on how we start this life, but we do choose how we can respond. We do get to choose in what direction our life moves. I'm just going to be vulnerable for a second. I've seen how easy it is to get stuck in this cycle. Even in situations where help is available, you can become very comfortable. I get it. There have been times in my life that I've needed help. I'm so grateful that it was there. I'll be honest, that doesn't feel like freedom. That just feels like a different bondage, a mental prison, which can feel like the scariest place in the world. I knew that, and I knew that I couldn't stay there. When we moved back from Arizona, there was a moment where everything kind of hit me. I had to ask myself, am I going to keep living like this, or am I going to change something? And that wasn't an easy question, because change, that means responsibility. Change means ownership, but it is necessary. This episode has very much been based and focused around blindness in all of the different forms. I've seen that in my relationships, where you don't realize how much you're affecting people until you finally see it. I was blind, now I can see that. I've seen it in gratitude, where you don't realize what you have until it's almost gone. I was blind, and now I see. I've also seen that in my faith, where you don't recognize God's hand in your life until sometimes when you look back. I was blind, and now I can see. I've seen it in my identity, where you don't realize who you're becoming until you compare it to who you used to be. And that is your competition. I was blind to it, and now I see. And for me, I've seen too many things in my life to deny that. I've seen too many moments, too many changes, and way too many experiences. I wish that I had all the answers. But I've seen enough in my life to know this. I'm not who I used to be, and I'm not going back to that person. So the real question is, what are you still blinded to? And would your life look different if you finally chose to see? Because the moment that you do, everything can change. I was blind, and now I can see. And once you see your life differently, you can't unsee it. If something in this message meant something to you, please like, subscribe, and share. And the awesome thing is you can check out the rest of the videos right here. And as always, keep living with purpose.